Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, looks like Washington is shuffling the deck at multiple positions. It's time to start playing musical chairs and getting other guys opportunities to see if they can perform better than the guys that have had opportunities have performed before them. And we've talked about some of these positions specifically for me, linebacker and safety. Those were my two biggest positions of concern right now. Obviously, quarterback has been a separate discussion onto itself. But if you're talking about the defensive side of the football, a lot of people want to talk about, well, oh no, we're not getting pressure on the quarterback from the interior of the defensive line. I'm like, those guys are playing just fine. I want to focus on the linebacker play. I want to focus on the safety play. And I thought those were the two positions that, to me, on film, jump out at you as problematic, especially the linebackers. If you're looking at this past week, the linebackers were the number one reason why we struggled defensively on Sunday. And so this has been hit or miss with these linebackers. One week you really like them, the next week they're awful. There needs to be some level of consistency. Rivera has talked about that a number of times this year, and it continues to ring true. Jack Del Rio stepped to the podium. I thought he had some interesting things to say. He continues to be really, I think, disappointed in Ron's candidness and sometimes his forthright nature when he discloses some things that I think Jack would rather keep in-house. But, that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is, it's looking like right now, if you listen to Jack Del Rio, if you listen to Ron Rivera, it sounds like we're going to get a ton of DeShazer Everett in the upcoming week versus the Giants in week 6. Sounds like we're going to get a lot of Cole Holcomb if you listen to head coach Ron Rivera. And it sounds like we're going to get some Sadiq Charles at left guard, taking the place of Wes Martin, who has struggled this season, to say the least. Of all the offensive linemen, Sadiq Charles is the one that I feel, Wes Martin is the one that I feel like has been one of the weak spots of the offensive line. He was exposed. Again, it's Aaron Donald. Like, I'm not going to beat him up necessarily for just getting exposed against Aaron Donald. I mean, there are countless guys in the Aaron Donald morgue around the league that have been absolutely killed by Aaron Donald and his play. However, Wes Martin has been killed by a lot of guys this season. We all can think back to the first third down of the year against Malik Jackson and how bad he looked there. At times he's looked soft. He hasn't done a good job of anchoring. He's allowed a lot of bull rush pressures. He hasn't been tremendous in the run game. He's been okay, but you can improve there. And they feel like they have a guy that gives them the opportunity to improve there in Sadiq Charles, the rookie fourth rounder out of LSU. A lot of you asked this specific question earlier in the season. Hey, can Sadiq play left guard? Can he play guard? And I said, look, I'm pretty sure they will try him at guard if need be. If that opportunity presents itself, they'll give him a look at guard. But right now they're going to roll with the 5 guys that they have there. They're going to see how it works. And if Jaron Christian isn't ready for the left tackle position, they'll give Sadiq some looks and reps there. If Jaron Christian, who I think has been rock solid this year, and a lot of you have thought that he's been up and down and spotty, I think he's been pretty consistent this year. He's went against some really good players. You're talking Chandler Jones, you're talking Myles Garrett, you're talking about the Eagles defensive line and the guys that they can throw at you, and the likes. You didn't hear anything about Sadiq or Jaron Christian this week. He didn't have a big time pressure. That's because he didn't go up against somebody elite for the first time in a long time. Like, this guy's been pretty solid, man. There may be 1 or 2 snaps every game where you go, hey, Jaron Christian has to be better. But outside of that, he's been pretty solid, man. I've been impressed with a guy that hasn't really played a ton of football at this level getting the opportunity this year. I think he's played well, and I think they feel like they may have their left tackle for the foreseeable future in Jaron Christian. Again, if it's not broken, you don't need to go and fix it. There are other positions that do need to be fixed. And if you have a solution, which is what I was telling you guys about Morgan Moses is playing maybe among the best at the right tackle position in the entire league this year. Morgan Moses has been outstanding. And a lot of you wanted to run him the hell out of town. And this is what I've been preaching to you guys, that if it's not broken, don't look to go fix it. And so I think they may feel like, hey, Jaron Christian is just fine at left tackle. we think that, hey, they're taking Wes Schweitzer out of the lineup. I'll tell you this, with Brandon Sheriff returning, and it looks like he's going to make his return here in week 6, if Brandon Sheriff is good at left guard, or right guard, excuse me, and you get some struggles or an injury out of Sadiq Charles, I wouldn't be surprised if they went to Wes Schweitzer at right guard, or excuse me, left guard, and didn't go back to Wes Martin, because I told you, I thought Wes Schweitzer was playing phenomenal football. I thought he really exceeded my expectations. And it's not like I had set the bar extremely low for him, but I set it at a reasonable height, and he's cleared it by miles. When we signed him to the 3-year, $13 million deal, you know, I was looking at Wes and I was saying, you're a backup, dude, and I really don't want you in there. There's a reason you couldn't cut it in Atlanta. And I've watched him, and for this particular scheme, maybe he didn't fit the scheme in Atlanta. For this particular scheme, he's fitting in really well, and I thought he did some good things, man. I was impressed with Wes Schweitzer, so it wouldn't shock me that if something were to happen along the offensive line at one of the guard positions, they don't go back to Wes Martin, but rather to Wes Schweitzer. They go to the other Wes. But right now they're going to roll with these 5 guys, and let's hope that these 5 guys improve not just pass protection. Let's hope that they start creating some holes in the run game, because Sadiq Charles, one of his biggest attributes is his physicality. Yeah, he's a great athlete, but he's also a physical guy. So I'm hoping that Sadiq Charles morphs into this all-world guard that we look at and say, man, we got ourselves a gem here in Sadiq Charles at left guard, and now we can run the football on the left side. You know, so I'm hoping that, you know, these guys come in and reshape the offensive line, and we start to get a little bit more production out of them. And again, you got a rookie in there. The thing that you want the most with your offensive line is continuity. If you're going to be shuffling all these pieces, you get Brandon Sheriff back, now you're inserting Sadiq Charles, you're messing up the continuity of the line. So you're going to have some breakdowns. You're going to have some mistakes, because these guys have to gel and mesh and grow together. But you're hoping that over time, these guys improve. They continue to gel and mesh. And then eventually you got 5 guys that you can rely on moving forward, and they start to strengthen and become one on that offensive line. So let's cheers to this potentially being the 5 guys that could maybe win us this division. You know, help us start to take those steps offensively to help us go get a division crown this year. So Sadiq Charles looking more like the starter at left guard. Brandon Sheriff looks like he's ready to return at right guard. This line could be getting really healthy at the right time of this season, and we'll see what these guys are able to do coming up this week. It looks really good on the offensive line, though. I like the way this looks. Now let's see how it looks on the field. And so you get to the linebacker position. To me, that's the biggest problem with the roster right now defensively, is the linebacker position. You're not going to fix this overnight, and one guy isn't going to come in and solve all of your ills at linebacker either. But I'm willing to try anything at this point after seeing what I saw on Sunday. And so Cole Holcomb sounds like he's the next man up. And we'll talk more about the linebacker position and what the coaching staff had to say about it, because it's not just me and some other people out there that feel like the linebacker position isn't good enough. They see it too. And that's the most important part, is I can feel one way about it. If they don't acknowledge it, and they still seem to be in the dark a bit about, and I don't think they're in the dark as much as they understand that there's nothing they can do about it now. You know, but the fact that John Bostic has played every defensive snap for this team, he has not come off the field. It doesn't matter what formation the offense lines up in, what package they decide to go with defensively. John Bostic has been on the field essentially every single snap this season. That's not good. But that's a guy that they trust, and they've talked about his health and durability and how they just know. And I talked about this last night. He's a guy that they just trust, period. You know, whether he gets the job done or not, they know that John Bostic is a guy they can rely on. You know, not necessarily to get the job done and execute properly, but to get everybody lined up, to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to get the message to everybody about what they're playing, what to look out for. He's a smart guy. I've already said that. You know, I don't doubt his smarts and his ability to know where guys are supposed to go, where he's supposed to be. But again, I think he doesn't just go out and play. I think he does a lot of thinking, and that's the problem with John Bostic. But you're going to see a lot of Cole Holcomb, it sounds like. I don't know if he's going to start the game. I don't know where he's going to play exactly, but it sounds like we're going to see a lot of Cole Holcomb. come Sunday. And Cole Holcomb himself spoke to the media. They made him available on Wednesday. He had a lot to say, and he said he watched a ton of film and he feels really good about where he is mentally. And he finally got the green light. He thought he could go last week, but they didn't give him the green light last week. He's gotten the full green light this week in the clearance to go out and play. He's no longer on the injury report. He feels like he's ready to go and compete, and he thinks he's going to have a much bigger role than what he was supposed to have when this season first started. Remember, he wasn't starting week 1. He wasn't getting on the field. He was on special teams when he got injured. So it's a different role for him now as he comes back. Again, don't know where they're going to play him. I just want to see him on the field because, again, it can't get much worse than what we've seen from some of these backers throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. So that's another guy going to see some reps. And then DeShazer Everett. And if you've watched my defensive film, I believe it was in the second half of my film breakdown against the Rams defensively that I made the comment. I stopped the play and I said, look, I don't really want much here. But I do want to point this out. Now, and I singled out DeShazer Everett, and I said, and it was a play where he came up in run support. I thought he did a good job of filling. And I said, this is the kind of play, and this is the type of effort that they like. And I think because he takes much better angles, DeShazer Everett is a much better athlete than I think people give him credit for. And I think he's a smart guy. He's a team captain. He's tough as nails. They like DeShazer Everett, and he's growing on me. Watching more film on him, he's growing on me as a guy that I think can come in and give them a little something. And Jack Del Rio even said that himself. And so I said this during the film breakdown. I said, don't be surprised. And this was before Del Rio stepped up to the podium today. I did this yesterday. And I said, don't be surprised if DeShazer Everett sees more snaps. Because remember, he was in the game a lot more in week 5. And they actually had benched Apke at one point. And they were kind of going back and forth. Apke would be in certain instances. And then DeShazer would be in. I said, don't be surprised if you see a lot more DeShazer Everett and a lot less Troy Apke moving forward. I'm not necessarily saying that Apke won't be out there at all or he won't be starting, but don't be surprised if you see a lot more DeShazer Everett back there in week number 6 than you do Troy Apke, because I think Everett has earned the right to get some more snaps to show that he belongs out there alongside Landon Collins. And really, you can't go much more wrong than what you've seen from Troy Apke, especially in the tackle department. This guy is overrunning plays. He's missing tackles. He's not even getting hands on guys sometimes. And then we've seen some of the mishaps in coverage in terms of lapses in coverage, lapses in, his angles and things of that nature. I think there are a little bit of some issues back there with communication with Apke. And so I think they look at DeShazer Everett as a guy that can maybe clean up some of those things and give them a little bit more consistency. That seems to be the buzzword around Redskins Park these days, or Washington, whatever they call the building now. That seems to be the buzzword now out in Ashburn. Let's just call it that. It is consistency. And I talked about that and the lack thereof. And so they're hoping that these guys that they're going to give an opportunity to in week 6 gives them a little bit more consistency. We'll see how it pans out for them, but hell, you can't do much worse. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys get opportunities and seeing what they actually do with them. So with that being said, let's get to in other news. Del Rio stepped up to the podium here today as the defensive coordinator. Head coach Ron Rivera stepped up to the podium. He had some things to say. So we will talk about what those guys had to say at their pressers here in a second. But as we usually do, as we get deeper into the week, I want to take a look at the injury report for both teams. So let's take a look at that first before we talk about what these coaches had to say about the upcoming week and the task at hand versus the New York Giants. So as we look at the injury report for this week's game heading into this big-time showdown versus the New York Giants in Week 6 in the division family business, you look at this injury report, and it looks a lot more promising than it did just a couple of weeks ago. Hell, even last week, this was a much longer list. This week, it's condensed, and this looks more like Week 2, Week 3, early in the season when we didn't have as many guys banged up. So that's promising. And a lot of the names up here you feel good about because they're not as big of contributors So you don't feel like, man, if this guy doesn't play, we could be in some trouble. Obviously, if we can get Steven Sims back, that'd be a massive help to this offense. But he's still a couple of weeks away as he was put on IR last week. So he's still got 2 more weeks before he can come off of the IR list and potentially get back into the lineup. But and you know what? You get that bye week. I'm targeting after the bye week for Steven Sims Jr., just in case you were wondering. He can't come off of the IR until the week before the bye week. I think he's going to come back after the bye week. So looking forward to seeing Steven Sims in the lineup after we come out of that bye, our November 1st bye that we have this year. But you look at the list, Joshua Garnett is a guy that is dealing with an illness. Same with Dwayne Haskins. Neither of them have practiced this week, and neither one of those guys right now as it stands are contributors in a major way anyhow. So those don't really concern me all that much. The one that really sticks out for me, or 3 of them in particular, Chase Roulier, starting center, did not practice with the knee. Remember, that was an issue at the end of the week last week. It flared up, and we weren't sure if he was going to play. He ultimately did, and I thought he was solid in the game. And so full practice on Thursday after not practicing on Wednesday. So that's a good sign. I feel pretty confident that Chase Roulier will be able to suit up, barring any setbacks. Obviously, things can change and anything can happen. But barring any setbacks, I look for Chase Roulier to be in the lineup come Sunday. Same could be said for Antonio Gibson, who was dealing with the toe injury. Limited on Wednesday, full participant Thursday. I think he's going to be just fine. Again, Steven Sims is dealing with a toe injury, and he tried to go, made it worse, and we haven't seen him since. So that's something to keep an eye on. You never want a guy that's playing a position like running back dealing with a toe injury. And then Kyle Allen is the next one that you should be concerned with. Left shoulder injury. He was a full participant Wednesday as well on Thursday. I feel pretty confident if I had to bet on any of these guys, definitely playing, barring a setback. And he shouldn't be taking any contact. So barring anything crazy out of the blue happening, Kyle Allen should be under center on Sunday when Washington takes on the New York Giants. Greg Stroman is a guy I fully expect to be out in this game. And he's another one of those guys that I don't know what they're waiting on. You just go ahead and put him on IR. Again, for whatever reason, they don't seem to be wanting to jump the gun on some of these guys on IR. You know if a guy's coming back in 3 weeks or not. He didn't play last week. He hasn't practiced this week. He's not going to play this week. He should have been on IR already. I don't know what they're waiting on, but I can tell you this much. He's not playing this week, and I'd be shocked if he played next week either. So why not just put him on IR, free up a roster spot so you can move somebody else up to the active roster. But we'll see what they decide to do. On the Giants side of things, all of these guys it's a very short list, number one. So they're relatively healthy coming into this game. Number two, these are all impactful players for the Giants. Every single one of them are guys that they rely on. Kyler Fackrell is a guy that they got in free agency from the Green Bay Packers. He's played extremely well for them. Had a touchdown return, I think it was last week against Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, that he took a interception to the crib. This guy has been an impactful player for them this year coming over from Green Bay. He's been limited thus far this week with an ankle injury. We'll see if he's able to go and what his status is for the game. Dexter Lawrence is a big man in the middle of that defense. Their defensive line has played really well against the run specifically for the most part this season. So he's a big part of the reason why he's a big man. I liked him coming out of Clemson a couple of years ago. And so to me, that's a really big guy for them on that defensive line. And he's got a knee injury, been limited all week so far. We'll see what his status is as we get to Friday and what they think about him. Questionable, probable, what may have you. Same can be said for Jabril Peppers, another guy dealing with an ankle injury. He's been really dealing with this for the last 3 weeks or so. So eventually he's going to be able to get back out there and play. This may be the week that he's able to do so. Limited on Wednesday, limited on Thursday. I think he's going to play. I really do. We'll see what happens. Remember, he hurt us the last time we played the Giants in the Meadowlands. If you recall last year, he had 2 picks against us when we played the Giants last year up in New York or New Jersey when Dwayne got in the game. Jabril Peppers had himself a whale of a ball game. And then Darius Slayton is by far and away their best wide receiver, not even close. and he's dealing with a foot injury. And if he doesn't play, that takes away the element of the deep threat, a guy that can stretch the football field vertically. We seem to have defensive breakdowns every week in the secondary where somebody's running free. He's the candidate most likely to be the guy running free in our secondary if we're not careful. And the fact that he's dealing with a foot injury and has been limited all week is not a good thing for the Giants. If he can't go, it really cripples what is already a very meager, at best, wide receiver core. So if he can go, he's problematic because he can stretch the football field vertically. If he can't, they're going to be hurt at the wide receiver position because it's already thin there to begin with. So that's the injury report for both teams. We'll keep a close eye on these teams and their respective injuries and monitor these situations closely as we get closer to the game. But we get back to in other news where Jack Del Rio and head coach Ron Rivera stepped up to the podium. We'll start with Rivera. And he's sick and tired of answering the Dwayne questions, as he should be. He pretty much said, look, Dwayne's not feeling well. We don't want him to infect anybody else with whatever it is that he has. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's going on. So you can just stop asking me, but he's not here. I don't know what else you guys want me to say, but I'm not a doctor, okay? And again, this is all Ron's fault. He did this to himself because he could have nipped this in the bud when it first broke that, Dwayne was sick. And like, look, guys, this is a whole pandemic we got going on. It's COVID-19. And he doesn't have it, okay? He's been tested multiple times. He doesn't have it. But what happens when you're sick is you're more susceptible to getting COVID-19. And we don't want to expose our players to that. So we're trying to keep Dwayne as far away from the facility as possible. He's coming in every day because it's mandatory that he come in every day and get tested. And after that, he's going back home because we want to keep the rest of the players here safe. That's it. Then there's no confusion when you say, hey, we didn't make Dwayne go home, and you're essentially implying that he decided to go home on his own. That's when you bring that to your doorstep. Now you're welcoming more questions. Now people want clarification. Well, did Dwayne leave on his own? And he doesn't want to get into any of that. Well, you could have nipped that in the bud 3 days ago, but you didn't. All you did was you continued to stoke that fire. So when they ask questions, you can't get mad. You can't be perturbed. You didn't put this fire out when you had a chance. They gave you an extinguisher and you just put it down next to you. And instead, you threw a couple more coals on the fire. Well, what the hell do you expect? Anyway, so he had to answer some more Dwayne questions. But after he got past that, they asked him some questions specifically about the Giants. They asked him some questions specifically about his team. And so when you talk about the Giants questions, they asked him about James Bradberry. That was a guy that I wanted, if you recall, in free agency at the cornerback position. Once we got Kendall Fuller, I didn't think they were going to spend big on multiple corners. And they got Kendall Fuller for a much more considerably cheap deal than that of James Bradberry. I think Bradberry's deal ended up being around $15 million per or north of that. They got Kendall Fuller on a 10-year per deal. So I think they are very satisfied with what they're getting from Kendall Fuller. He's been making big plays as Fuller. And Bradberry's been really good, though. I mean, he's been exceptional to start this season off. And so Rivera pretty much gave a scouting report on James Bradberry because, remember, that was his guy in Carolina. They drafted him out of Samford in the second round, or I think it was the second round. It might have been the third round. A lot of people, including myself, thought it was a little bit too early for James Bradberry to come off the board. He has developed into a really quality, rock-solid NFL starting corner. And he's a guy that you got to watch out for because he does make plays on the football. So he talked about, his strengths and that he's a physical corner. He's a guy with ball skills. And you've seen that if you've watched the Giants this year, that James Bradberry is playing at a very, very high level. And so that's a guy you have to watch out for if you're Washington heading into this game. He also talked about Daniel Jones and what the scouting report was on him coming out of Duke. And, he pretty much kept it basic. Hey, guy's an athlete. He's a smart guy, played in the offense under a guy that's well-respected in league circles and David Cutcliffe. And so, he pretty much talked about him having a big arm and all of these things and that, they're doing it the right way. They're running the New England offense sort of kind of out there. And so a lot of the things that they're doing has been effective in this league. So they have to watch out the coach speaks stuff, which is what you're supposed to do. You don't want to give anybody any bulletin board material. As far as his team is concerned, he talked about the linebackers not being good enough. Simply put, linebackers aren't doing a good enough job. We need more out of that position. They're really hurting us, essentially, is what he said. And I was shocked to hear that admission from him, but I shouldn't be shocked anymore because Ron seems to be giving up a lot of intel, a lot of information. You just ask, and Ron seems to be really willing to oblige and give you anything that you're looking for, as long as it's not something he doesn't feel like talking about, i.e. Dwayne. So I felt like, again, he could have given a lot less. Look, the linebackers stink. We are aware of this. We don't need you telling everybody else that the linebackers stink. They can see it themselves, and you can just say, hey, we're looking for a little bit more out of that position. Cole was a guy that we were really intrigued by, and we wanted to get him in early, and then he got injured, and there was a setback there. But now that he's healthy, we want to see what Cole has to offer. That's it. Like, you don't have to get into the minutia and the specific, minute details of what's going on at the linebacker position. Just know it's not good enough. And he essentially alluded to that, and then some. And then he talked about, other guys and Kyle Allen in particular. And they asked him about, the little run that he had where he got hurt. And if the linebacker in him was excited for the run, or was he more torn because of the coach side of things that, hey, Kyle Allen is hurt. Now you got to put Alex Smith in. And to that, Ron said, yeah, I was torn. I'm kind of split because on one hand, I loved it. This guy's, he's giving everything he's got. He's selling out for his team. He's being tough and physical, which you need your quarterback to be. But then he gets up and he's a little woozy, and I'm like, oh. And that's when the coach side of me, of him kicked in, he said, and he was like, man, that can't have that happen. And so, like I said, as long as Kyle Allen, this is the only thing I needed to hear, and Kyle Allen told me yesterday. I'm gonna keep running, essentially. Without saying it, he said it. I'm gonna keep running. That's a part of my game, and it's a part of what you have to be in today's NFL. He's so right, and I'm glad he understands that. So, and Ron doesn't seem to be as stringent on him not running as Scott Turner was yesterday, which, again, that's all I needed to hear. So, Jack Del Rio is my guy because Jack doesn't give you anything. And Jack seemed a little, like I said, a little perturbed that, Ron was talking about the leverage situation at the cornerback position, which I don't think the corners have been all that bad in leverage situations. I think it's more like a Jimmy Moreland when he gets in and his lack of identifying leverage and how to use it. But Jimmy didn't play a ton, on Sunday. So, I didn't know where that comment necessarily came from, and I don't know if it was necessary, but Jack sure didn't think it was necessary. Jack was like, look, we're not that bad. There's some things to clean up. That's one of Jack's favorite lines. Just like with Minuski, it was, hey, we just got to communicate better. For Jack, his go-to line is, yeah, there's some things we got to clean up. But, that's what you do. You clean things up. You get better. You continue to work, and we've got some things to work on and clean up. But, we're getting better. And I like where we are, but we got to get better. And he talked about third down defense. He said right now we're 12th in the league on third downs. That's not good enough for us. We want to be top 5 on third downs. Well, look, the fact that we're 12th right now is amazing because when you watch these games, when I go back and I watch the film, it feels like we're 12th. When I'm watching the game, I can't speak for anybody else. When I'm watching the game in real time, the TV copy, it feels like we're 21st in the league on third downs. Feels like we're not getting enough third down stops. But when I watch the film, I'm like, damn, we got off the field quite a bit in this game. It in the moment, it doesn't feel that way. And some of it is timing. Because if you're getting off the field and then the offense scores and then you don't get the stop and the other team scores, it feels like you're not getting enough third down stops in the moment when you are actually getting a ton of stops. And we got a ton of stops versus the Rams, especially in the second half of the game, and the offense just wasn't able to do anything with it. So he said, we're 12th right now, but we want to be top 5, so we've got a lot of work to do. And he did acknowledge that, linebackers need to be better. So we're going to try some guys, and, Cole's the next guy up. We really like Cole, and we want to see what Cole has to offer. So it sounds like, and he said the same thing about DeShazer Everett. We like some of the things DeShazer is able to do. We think he can give us, he said, I love what DeShazer did. He gave us a little juice off the bench on Sunday, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of DeShazer and what he has to offer. So he essentially admitted that, yeah, look, you know, we got some guys here that we like, that we want to see more from, and we're going to give them a run. So I think they confirmed everything that we've talked about all week about the linebackers and the safeties in particular. They pretty much acknowledged that, and that's good to know. Anyway, let's get to our first look at the New York Giants and this big-time NFC East matchup. I know it sounds crazy to say that with one team coming in at 1-4 and the other coming in at 0-5, but when the division leader is sitting there at 2-3, this is a massive game. There's no two ways about it. And normally you'd be out of it by now, and now you're playing for pride. Or in the case of Washington and the Giants last year, you know, it was funny because Chase Young was made available to the media, and they brought up the whole Chase Young Bowl last year between these same two teams. And Chase was like, man, y'all crazy. I ain't even getting into that. Like, I heard that mess last year, but like, that's the kind of stuff I try to stay away from. You know, and he was really funny at the end of that whole media availability. He was so funny at the end of that Zoom call when they were talking about that Chase Bowl, because he was like, look, I don't want any parts of that. And he said, yeah, I heard it. You know, I heard it, and people were sending me videos and stuff. And he's like, nah, I didn't want any parts of that, man. Y'all tripping. That was funny, but this is a similar situation. A lot of people are talking about, you know, this could ultimately determine who's going to get Trevor Lawrence. You know, like, again, I don't think we're going to be that bad, but a lot of you seem to feel that way. But that's another conversation for another day. This game in particular is interesting from a number of standpoints, and I'm not going to get into specifics on what needs to be done. We'll do that tomorrow, but I can tell you this much. I do think the biggest matchup in this game is our defensive front versus their offensive line. I think their offensive line is one that you can take advantage of. I don't think they have a ton of weaponry out there. Daniel Jones can be dangerous at times. He has shown the ability to use his legs. Look, he ate us alive last season. He had a field day against us the second time around. The first time we saw him in New York, if you recall, he threw 2 picks in that game. Quentin Dunbar got him twice in that game. So it's not like he was awesome last year against us. We just were terrible in that game. And I think we only scored like 3 points. And so they devoured us in that game, despite Daniel Jones really struggling in that game. However, the second time he saw us, he went apeshit. You know, 5 touchdown passes, including the game winner in overtime. He was outstanding in that game. And we can't allow that to happen again. We can't allow him to gain confidence early. I really feel like we got to get after him early and to often. And if we do that, we're going to put ourselves in a position to force this guy to do what he's done best this season and even last season, just turn the football over. So I feel like that's one of the keys to the game. When we look at their offense versus our defense and our defense versus or our offense versus their defense, I think there are a lot of things here that are intriguing. Their defense is playing really well. Now, I know you couldn't tell against the Cowboys on Sunday, but the Cowboys are really good. They're one of the best offenses in football in terms of from a talent perspective. So I wasn't shocked to see what the Cowboys were able to do, but don't mistake that for the Giants or trash on defense, because the same Rams team that just put 30 on us, they could only muster 17, and that game was 10-9 with about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter before they scored on a big Cooper Kupp pass over the middle of the football field to extend that lead out to 8 at 17-9. So they hung tough. This is a Giants defense that has been playing some quality football. And if you think they're going to lay down or you think they're trash, you're sadly mistaken. We've got our work cut out for us, and we haven't lit up anybody's defense. So it's hard for me to believe that all of a sudden we're just going to show up and all of a sudden score 31 points. But we're due for a big offensive explosion. Could it be this week? Could it be next week against a team that's giving it up to everybody? We'll see. But I just know we're due for a big game. We're due for an outburst, points-wise. Don't know when it's coming, but eventually I think it's going to come. Hopefully it's this week, next week, the week after that. Hopefully we start to get a little into an offensive rhythm, and we'll talk more about how we can achieve that against the Giants tomorrow. But just know that our defensive line has to win in the trenches, not only against the pass and Daniel Jones, but also in the run game. To me, one of the biggest keys is stopping their run game. Devontae Freeman has come over, and he's doing some good things for them. Stop their run first, force them in 3rd and long, and see if you can't pin your ears back and get after Daniel Jones and either force him to fumble the football, sack him, or force him into a mistake or an interception or an incompletion. Either way, you got to get them in those 3rd and long situations. They can't be in 3rd and short and manageable like we've seen from some of these teams the last few weeks. So we'll get into this game in depth tomorrow. But for now, that's going to do it. I thank you guys for joining me here on Washington Football Nightly. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. And also remember that there's Patreon if you haven't got there. And I really appreciate all of you guys who have joined Patreon and become a patron. And I really appreciate your patronage. I sincerely do. And I hope that you are satisfied with the product that you are getting, because this film, to me, it's important to know what's going on. And if you want to learn more about the game, the film is the best way to help you do that. So I want to thank all of you for your patronage, and I look forward to continuing to bring you content that you can be pleased with. And I really appreciate all of your donations. That being said, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until tomorrow, go ahead and get those predictions ready. Don't forget, LouieTeeNetwork podcast tomorrow, 12 noon. Should be fun. Got a lot to discuss because we didn't do it on Wednesday. And so a lot of things have transpired, and we'll talk about all those things, give you my picks for the week, and then we'll come back here on Friday, break this game down, give you my prediction, score, and more for this game, and look forward to seeing yours as well. But until then, you guys take care, stay safe. Remember, I'm your man Louie T, and this has been Washington Football Nightly. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone.